Marcus Chin stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching the city lights blur into streaks of gold and white below. His reflection stared back at him, a 34-year-old man who looked 50, with hollow cheeks, bloodshot eyes, and the kind of pallor that only came from years without proper rest. The clock on his mahogany desk read 3:47 a.m. Another sleepless night in what had become an endless string of them. 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. That was how long it had been since Marcus had enjoyed a full night's sleep. What started as occasional insomnia during the early days of building his tech empire had evolved into something far more sinister. His company, Chemtech Solutions, was now worth $2.8 billion. But success had come at a price that money couldn't fix. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had created revolutionary software that helped hospitals optimize patient care, yet he couldn't solve his own basic human need for rest. Every night, he would lie in his king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling, while his mind raced through business strategies, market analyses, and the endless stream of decisions that came with running a Fortune 500 company. Marcus walked back to his desk and picked up the latest medical report from Dr. Harrison, his sleep specialist. The words blurred together as exhaustion played tricks on his vision, but the conclusion remained the same as always. Physically, there was nothing wrong with him. His brain scans were normal, his hormone levels balanced, and his heart functioned perfectly. The problem, according to every doctor he'd consulted, was psychological. But therapy hadn't worked. Neither had meditation, yoga, acupuncture, or the dozens of prescription sleep medications he'd tried. Some made him drowsy, but sleep remained elusive. He would drift into a light doze, only to snap awake minutes later, more alert than before. The frustration had become a living thing inside him, feeding on itself and growing stronger with each passing night. His assistant, Jennifer, had left a stack of messages on his desk before going home. Most were from business contacts, but one caught his attention. It was written on a small piece of cream-colored paper, different from Jennifer's usual yellow sticky notes. Mr. Chun, I heard about your situation through a mutual friend. I specialize in cases like yours. If traditional methods haven't worked, perhaps it's time to try something different. I charge $10,000 for one night session, but I guarantee results. Call me if you're ready to sleep again. Elena Martinez, Sleep Recovery Specialist. Below the message was a phone number and an address in the quieter part of the city. Marcus had never heard of a sleep recovery specialist, but at this point, he was willing to try anything. He had spent more than that amount on a single bottle of wine at business dinners. If there was even a chance this Elena Martinez could help him, $10,000 was a bargain. He reached for his phone and hesitated. It was nearly 4 a.m. Normal people would be asleep. But then, again, normal people didn't charge $10,000 for a single session. And normal people didn't claim to guarantee results for chronic insomnia. The phone rang twice before a warm, slightly accented voice answered. Elena Martinez speaking. Ms. Martinez, this is Marcus Chun. I found your note on my desk, and I'm interested in your services. Mr. Chun. Her voice carried no surprise, as if she had been expecting his call. I'm glad you reached out. Your case was brought to my attention by Dr. Harrison. He thought you might benefit from my approach. Marcus frowned. Dr. Harrison had never mentioned anyone named Elena Martinez. I'm not sure I understand. When did you speak with Dr. Harrison? Yesterday afternoon. He's referred several clients to me when traditional sleep medicine hasn't provided relief. I work with cases that fall outside conventional treatment parameters. There was something soothing about her voice, a quality that made Marcus feel calmer than he had in months. And your methods involve what exactly? That's difficult to explain over the phone, Mr. Chun. My techniques combine elements of psychology, environmental therapy, and what you might call unconventional healing practices. I work with the whole person, not just the symptoms. Marcus rubbed his tired eyes. And you guarantee results? I do. If you don't achieve at least 6 hours of continuous sleep during our session, you don't pay. I take on very few clients, Mr. Chun, and I only work with people who are truly ready to let go of whatever is keeping them awake. The confidence in her voice was compelling. Marcus had spoken with dozens of doctors and specialists over the years, and none had ever offered a guarantee. When can we meet? Tonight. if you're available. I find that people in your condition respond best to immediate intervention. The longer we wait, the more entrenched the patterns become. Marcus looked at his schedule. He had a board meeting at 8 a.m., but he had functioned on no sleep before. In fact, it was becoming his normal state. Where do we meet? I'll come to you. Your home environment is important for this process. I'll need access to your bedroom and the surrounding areas where you spend your evening hours. Something about a stranger coming to his penthouse should have raised red flags. But Marcus was beyond caring about normal precautions. His security system was state-of-the-art, and he was desperate enough to take reasonable risks. I'll text you my address. When should I expect you? Give me 2 hours to prepare. I'll arrive at 6 a.m. Please ensure that we won't be disturbed. No staff, no phone calls, no interruptions of any kind. After hanging up, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. It was a fragile feeling, but real nonetheless. He spent the next hour clearing his schedule and sending instructions to his household staff to leave for the day once Elena arrived. At exactly 6 a.m., his doorman called to announce a visitor. Marcus had been watching from his window and had seen a woman exit a simple sedan at the curb. She carried a medium-sized black bag and moved with the confident stride of someone who belonged wherever she went. When the private elevator opened into his penthouse foyer, Marcus got his first look at Elena Martinez. She appeared to be in her early 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a simple bun and intelligent brown eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She wore dark jeans and a soft gray sweater, professional but not formal. There was an immediate sense of calm about her that Marcus found both surprising and oddly comforting. Mr. Chun, thank you for trusting me with your time. She extended her hand with a firm grip and a warm smile. I know this is unusual. Please, call me Marcus. And unusual is what I need at this point. Elena nodded and looked around the expansive penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, and expensive artwork lined the walls. The space was immaculate and modern, but it felt more like a showroom than a home. Tell me about your typical evening routine, she said, setting her bag down near the entrance. Marcus gestured toward the living area. I usually work until midnight or later. Then, I try to wind down by reading or watching television. Around 2 a.m., I go to bed and lie there until morning. And during those hours in bed, what's happening in your mind? Everything. Business problems, market projections, conversations I need to have, decisions I need to make. It's like my brain refuses to turn off. Elena walked slowly through the living space, pausing to touch surfaces and examine details. When did you last feel truly relaxed? The question caught Marcus off guard. He couldn't remember the last time he had felt genuinely at ease. I'm not sure I understand what you mean. When did you last have a moment where your mind was quiet, where you weren't thinking about the next thing you needed to accomplish? Marcus considered this. Probably not since before I started the company. Maybe 5 years ago. And what happened 5 years ago that changed everything? As Elena asked the question, she was studying a photograph on his bookshelf. It showed Marcus with a woman about his age, both of them laughing at something off camera. They looked happy and carefree in a way that seemed impossible now. That's Sarah, Marcus said quietly. We were engaged. Elena didn't turn around, but he could see her reflection in the window. Her expression had softened. What happened to Sarah? She died in a car accident. 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days ago. The connection hit him like a physical blow. The date matched exactly with the beginning of his insomnia. How had he never made that correlation before? Elena finally turned to face him. I'm sorry for your loss. That must have been devastating. It was. But I dealt with it. I threw myself into work, built the company, moved on with my life. Did you? Elena's voice was gentle but direct. Or did you replace grief with productivity and convince yourself that was the same as healing? Marcus felt a flash of irritation. I've been to therapy. I've worked through the grief process. This insomnia isn't about Sarah, isn't it? Elena picked up the photograph and handed it to him. Tell me about the last night you slept well. Marcus looked at the photo, and suddenly, he was back in that moment. It had been taken at his birthday party, just weeks before the accident. Sarah had organized the whole thing as a surprise, filling his penthouse with friends and colleagues. They had stayed up until dawn, talking and laughing, and then slept until noon the next day. The last time he had slept peacefully was the night before Sarah died. Elena watched as the realization dawned on his face. Your mind has learned to associate sleep with vulnerability, with letting your guard down. And the last time you did that, the most important person in your life was taken from you. Marcus set the photo down with shaking hands. That's impossible. Sleep and Sarah's death have nothing to do with each other. Don't they? Think about it, Marcus. Sleep is the ultimate act of trust. We close our eyes, become unconscious, and trust that we'll wake up to a world that's essentially the same as the one we left. But that trust was broken for you. You went to sleep one night with Sarah alive and, well, and woke up to a phone call that changed everything. The truth of her words hit him like a wave. For 3 years, he had convinced himself that his insomnia was stress-related or perhaps a side effect of his demanding lifestyle. But Elena was right. His mind had learned to equate sleep with danger, with the possibility that everything could change while he wasn't watching. How do I fix it? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We start by acknowledging what your sleeplessness has been protecting you from. You've spent 3 years in a state of hypervigilance, trying to control everything around you so that you never again experience the helplessness you felt that morning. Elena moved toward the windows and looked out at the city. Your mind believes that if you stay awake, you can prevent bad things from happening. It's an illusion, of course, but a powerful one. Marcus joined her at the window. So what do? We teach your nervous system that it's safe to rest again. But first, I need to know if you're ready to let go of the control that your insomnia has given you. What do you mean? Elena turned to face him directly. Your sleeplessness has become a form of self-punishment and control. You can't save Sarah by staying awake forever, and you can't prevent future losses by exhausting yourself. Are you ready to forgive yourself for being asleep when she died? The question hit deeper than Marcus expected. He had never consciously blamed himself for not being there, but Elena's words revealed a guilt he hadn't acknowledged. If he had been awake, if he had called Sarah that night, if he had insisted she not drive in the rain, there were 1,000 scenarios where he might have changed the outcome. I don't know how, he admitted. That's why I'm here. But this process requires complete trust, Marcus. You're going to have to let me guide you into a state of vulnerability that your mind has been fighting against for years. Marcus looked at this woman who had walked into his life just hours ago and somehow identified the root of a problem that had stumped teams of medical professionals. What do you need me to do? Elena smiled for the first time since arriving. First, we're going to change everything about your environment. Your bedroom has become a battleground between you and sleep. We need to make it a sanctuary again. She picked up her bag and gestured toward the stairs leading to his bedroom suite. Show me where you've been fighting this war. As they climbed the stairs, Marcus felt a mixture of hope and terror. For the first time in years, he was allowing someone else to take control of his most private struggle. But Elena's calm confidence and the accuracy of her insights made him believe that maybe, just maybe, tonight would be different. The bedroom was as elegant and sterile as the rest of the penthouse. A massive bed dominated the space, flanked by nightstands with reading lamps. The walls were painted in neutral tones, and blackout curtains blocked most of the city light. Elena walked around the room slowly, taking in every detail. How do you feel when you enter this space? Tense. Frustrated. Like I'm preparing for battle. That's because you are. Every night, you come in here expecting to fail, and your body responds accordingly. She opened her bag and began removing items. Several small battery-operated candles, a small speaker, bottles of essential oils, and what appeared to be some kind of weighted blanket. We're going to completely reset this environment. But first, I want you to take a hot shower and change into the most comfortable clothes you own. Not pajamas, something that makes you feel safe and relaxed. How is changing clothes going to help me sleep? Elena looked up from arranging the candles around the room. Every detail matters, Marcus. Your mind has learned to associate certain cues with the frustration of insomnia. We need to create entirely new associations. While Marcus showered, he could hear Elena moving around the bedroom, rearranging furniture, and creating what sounded like a completely different space. The hot water felt good on his tense muscles, and for the first time in weeks, He wasn't mentally reviewing his schedule for the next day. When he emerged wearing an old MIT sweatshirt and soft cotton pants, he barely recognized his own bedroom. Elena had dimmed all the artificial lighting and replaced it with the gentle glow of the battery-operated candles. She had moved the reading chairs to create a small conversation area away from the bed, and the scent of lavender and chamomile filled the air. "Better?" she asked. "It doesn't feel like the same room." "Good. Now we talk." Elena gestured to one of the chairs, and Marcus sat down. She took the chair across from him, close enough that they could speak in low tones, but far enough that he didn't feel crowded. "I want you to tell me about Sarah," she said simply. For the next hour, Marcus found himself sharing stories he hadn't told anyone since the funeral. He talked about how they met at a conference, how she had challenged his ideas, and made him think differently about work-life balance. He described their plans for the future, the house they were going to buy, the family they had talked about starting. As he spoke, Elena listened with complete attention, asking thoughtful questions that helped him remember not just the tragedy of losing Sarah, but the joy of having known her. "She would be horrified to know that you've spent 3 years punishing yourself like this," Elena said gently. Marcus felt tears that he had been holding back for years finally beginning to surface. "She always said I worked too hard. She was trying to teach me how to relax." Marcus approached the bed with the same trepidation he might feel walking toward a cliff edge. For 3 years, this piece of furniture had been his nemesis, the place where his exhaustion battled his racing mind every single night. But something was different now. The soft lighting and gentle scent of the essential oils Elena had used made the space feel foreign and somehow safer. "Before you lie down," Elena said, "I want you to understand what we're going to do. This isn't about forcing sleep or using any kind of medication. We're going to teach your nervous system that it's safe to let go of control." She moved to the small speaker she had placed on the dresser and connected her phone. Soft, rhythmic sounds began to fill the room. Not music exactly, but something that sounded like distant ocean waves mixed with barely audible tones. "Binaural beats," Elena explained. "They help guide your brain waves into patterns associated with deep relaxation. But the real work happens through a technique called guided somatic release." Marcus looked skeptical. "I've tried guided meditation before. It doesn't work for me. This is different. Meditation asks you to clear your mind, but your mind isn't the problem. The issue is stored in your nervous system, in the way your body has learned to respond to the idea of sleep. We're going to address that directly." Elena dimmed the candles even further, leaving just enough light to see each other clearly. "Lie down on your back, arms at your sides, and close your eyes. But don't try to sleep. In fact, I want you to stay awake and aware of everything I'm going to guide you through." Marcus settled onto the bed, surprised by how different it felt. Elena had placed the weighted blanket over him, and its gentle pressure was oddly comforting. The binaural beats created a cocoon of sound that seemed to separate him from the outside world. "Now," Elena's voice came from somewhere near the foot of the bed, "I want you to scan your body from head to toe and tell me where you feel tension." This was easy. Marcus had been carrying tension for so long that he barely noticed it anymore. "My shoulders, my jaw, my lower back, and my legs feel restless." "Good. Now, instead of trying to relax those areas, I want you to tense them even more. Clench your jaw as tight as you can. Raise your shoulders to your ears. Make fists with your hands." Marcus followed her instructions, creating deliberate tension throughout his body. It felt counterintuitive, but Elena's calm confidence made him trust the process. "Hold that tension for 10 seconds, then let it all go at once." When Marcus released the tension, the relief was immediate and profound. His muscles felt looser than they had in months. "Excellent. That's the first step in teaching your nervous system the difference between holding on and letting go. Now we're going to go deeper." Over the next 20 minutes, Elena guided Marcus through a series of breathing exercises and physical releases that seemed to unlock tension he didn't even know he was carrying. But the real breakthrough came when she began to address the emotional component of his insomnia. "Marcus, I want you to imagine that you're in the last conversation you had with Sarah. Can you picture where you were?" Marcus could see it clearly. They had been in his old apartment, sitting on the couch after dinner. Sarah had been excited about a project at work, and They had been planning a weekend trip to the mountains. What did you talk about? She was telling me about a new client, and I was half listening because I was thinking about a problem at work. She called me out on it, laughed, and said I needed to learn to be present. What happened next? Marcus felt his chest tighten. I got defensive. I told her that work was important, that I was building something that would secure our future. She said the future didn't matter if we didn't learn to enjoy the present. And then? We had a small argument. Nothing serious, just we went to bed without really resolving it. In the morning, she was gone before I woke up. She left a note saying she loved me and that we would talk more when she got home from her business trip. Elena's voice was very gentle. But she never came home. No, the phone call came around noon. There had been an accident on the highway. The roads were icy, and her car skidded into oncoming traffic. Marcus felt the familiar weight of guilt settling over him. If we hadn't argued, maybe she would have stayed another day. Maybe she would have delayed the trip. Or maybe the argument had nothing to do with what happened. Elena said, Marcus, I want you to listen carefully to what I'm about to say. Your last conversation with Sarah wasn't a fight. It was her trying to love you better. She was trying to help you be present with her because she valued your time together. This perspective had never occurred to Marcus. He had always remembered that night as a failure, as evidence that he had been a distracted and imperfect partner. But Elena was reframing it entirely. Sarah wasn't angry with you when she left that morning. She loved you, and she was looking forward to continuing a conversation about how to build a better life together. The note she left proves that. Marcus felt something shift inside his chest, as if a knot that had been there for 3 years was finally beginning to loosen. Now, Elena continued, I want you to have the conversation with Sarah that you never got to have. Tell her everything you wished you had said that night, and everything you've wanted to say since. At first, Marcus felt foolish talking to an empty room. But Elena's presence and the altered environment made it easier than he expected. He found himself speaking to Sarah as if she were there, apologizing for being distracted, telling her how much he loved her, sharing his grief and his guilt and his fear of moving forward without her. As he spoke, something remarkable happened. For the first time since the accident, Marcus began to remember Sarah as a living person rather than as a loss. He remembered her laugh, her terrible cooking, the way she would steal his sweatshirts and wear them around the apartment. He remembered her dreams and ambitions, her kindness to strangers, the way she could make him laugh when he was taking himself too seriously. What would Sarah want for you now? Elena asked. She would want me to take care of myself, to sleep, to find happiness again, maybe even to love again. The words surprised him as he said them. And what have you been doing for 3 years? Punishing myself, staying awake as if that could somehow bring her back or prove how much I loved her. Your insomnia has been a form of loyalty to your grief, but it's not a loyalty Sarah would want. She loved you, Marcus. She would want you to heal. As Elena spoke, Marcus felt his body beginning to relax in a way it hadn't in years. The weighted blanket felt like a comforting embrace, and the binaural beats seemed to be syncing with his heartbeat, slowing it down to a peaceful rhythm. I'm going to guide you through one more exercise, Elena said, and then I want you to rest. Picture yourself in a place where you felt completely safe and happy with Sarah. Don't analyze it or think about what happened later. Just be there with her. Marcus found himself remembering a weekend they had spent at a cabin in the mountains. It had been early in their relationship, and they had unplugged completely. No phones, no work, just hiking and reading and talking by the fire. They had slept late every morning, wrapped up in each other, and the luxury of having nowhere else to be. Stay in that memory. Elena's voice seemed to come from very far away. Feel the safety of that place, the peace of being completely present with someone you love. Let your body remember what it felt like to rest without worry. Marcus could almost smell the pine trees outside the cabin, could feel Sarah's warmth next to him in the small bed. For the first time in 3 years, the memory didn't hurt. Instead, it felt like a gift, a reminder that he had been deeply loved, and that love didn't end with death. Elena's voice became even softer. Your body knows how to sleep, Marcus. It's been protecting you from vulnerability, but Sarah's love was never about protection. It was about connection. Let yourself connect with rest the way you connected with her. Trust that you can let go and still wake up tomorrow. As Elena continued to speak, her words became less like instructions and more like a gentle current carrying him towards something he had been desperately seeking. The tension in his muscles melted away completely, and, for the first time in years, Marcus felt his mind beginning to quiet. Sleep is not a betrayal of the people we've lost, Elena whispered. It's a way of honoring them. Sarah's love lives in your rest, in your healing, in your willingness to believe that tomorrow can be good even when today is hard. Marcus felt himself drifting, but instead of the anxious jolt that usually snapped him awake, there was only peace. Elena's presence in the room felt protective rather than intrusive, as if she were standing guard over his vulnerability. The last thing he was aware of was Elena's voice, barely audible now, saying something that sounded like a prayer or a blessing. Sleep now, Marcus. Sarah's love surrounds you. You are safe to rest. When Marcus woke, sunlight was streaming through the gaps in the blackout curtains. For a moment, he was disoriented. The feeling of waking naturally was so foreign that he couldn't immediately process what had happened. Then, he saw the clock on his nightstand, 2:17 p.m. He had slept for over 8 hours. Marcus sat up slowly, expecting to feel groggy or disoriented, but instead he felt more alert and energetic than he had in years. The candles Elena had used were extinguished, and her speaker and essential oils were gone. The only sign that she had been there was a folded note on the nightstand. Marcus, the note read, "You did the hardest part. You trusted enough to let go. Your body remembers how to sleep now, but you may need to practice the techniques we used. The real work is learning to forgive yourself for being human, for not being able to control everything, and for deserving rest and happiness even after loss. Call me if you need support as you continue this healing. You're going to be fine." Elena. Marcus looked around his bedroom, which had been returned to its normal configuration, but somehow felt different. The space no longer seemed like a battlefield. Elena had managed to reprogram not just his sleep patterns, but his entire relationship with rest and vulnerability. He picked up his phone to check messages and was surprised to find a text from Elena, sent just an hour earlier. "How did you sleep?" Marcus typed back, "Better than I have in 3 years. How did you know it would work?" Elena's response came quickly, "Because you were ready. Your insomnia was never about sleep. It was about grief and guilt and the fear of letting go. Once you addressed those things, your body remembered what it was designed to do." Marcus found himself curious about this woman who had transformed his life in a single night. "Can we meet again? I'd like to take you to dinner to say thank you." There was a longer pause before Elena replied, "I don't usually socialize with clients, but I'll make an exception. There's something I need to tell you about why I do this work." Marcus felt a flutter of curiosity. Elena had been completely focused on him during their session, revealing nothing about her own background or motivations. "Tonight? I know it's short notice. Tonight works. There's a small Italian place called Rossetti's on 5th Avenue. Do you know it?" Marcus did know it. It was one of the few restaurants in the city that felt intimate and quiet, far from the high-energy places where he usually conducted business dinners. 7 o'clock? Perfect. And Marcus? Bring your questions. After what happened last night, you deserve to know my story too. Marcus arrived at Rossetti's 15 minutes early, a habit he had maintained throughout his business career, but which felt different now. Instead of using the extra time to review notes or make phone calls, he simply sat at their reserved table and watched the other diners. For the first time in years, he felt present in the moment rather than mentally racing ahead to the next task. The restaurant was exactly as he remembered it: dim lighting, exposed brick walls, and the kind of intimate atmosphere that encouraged conversation rather than performance. It was Sarah's favorite type of place, somewhere they could talk for hours without feeling rushed. The memory didn't sting the way it would have yesterday. Instead, it felt like a gentle acknowledgement of good times that had been lived fully. Elena arrived precisely at 7, looking different than she had that morning. She wore a simple black dress and had let her dark hair down, transforming her from the professional sleep specialist into someone who could have been any successful woman meeting a friend for dinner. But her eyes carried the same intelligent warmth that had made Marcus trust her so completely. "You look well-rested," she said with a smile as she sat down across from him. "I feel like a different person. I had more energy today than I've had in months. Marcus paused as the waiter approached, and they ordered drinks. Wine for Elena, sparkling water for Marcus. I've been thinking all day about what you did, and I have to admit I'm curious about your background. I've never heard of sleep recovery therapy. Elena's expression became more serious. That's because I invented it. My methods aren't taught in any university or medical school. Where did you learn them? From necessity. Elena took a sip of her wine and looked out the window for a moment before continuing. My story isn't so different from yours, Marcus. I lost someone important, and the loss destroyed my ability to sleep. But, in my case, the person I lost was my daughter. Marcus felt his breath catch. Elena had seemed so composed, so in control of her emotions, that he hadn't imagined her carrying such a profound loss. Her name was Sophia, and she was 4 years old when she died. It was a medical error, a routine surgery that went wrong because someone made a mistake with anesthesia. One day I was reading her bedtime stories, and the next day she was gone. Elena's voice remained steady, but Marcus could see the careful control it required. After Sophia died, I couldn't sleep for 18 months. I tried everything you tried, doctors, medications, therapy. Nothing worked. I was slowly going insane from exhaustion, and I knew that if I didn't find a solution, I was going to die too. What changed? I realized that my insomnia wasn't a medical problem. It was a spiritual one. I wasn't just grieving Sophia's death. I was refusing to accept a world where children could die and mothers couldn't protect them. My sleeplessness was a form of rebellion against reality. Elena paused as their appetizers arrived, but neither of them touched the food immediately. I spent 2 years developing the techniques I used with you. I studied psychology, trauma therapy, somatic healing, even some alternative spiritual practices. But most of what I learned came from experimenting on myself. And it worked. Eventually. But the process taught me something important. Most chronic insomnia isn't really about sleep. It's about trust. Trust that the world is safe enough to let your guard down. Trust that you deserve rest and peace. Trust that life can be good even after devastating loss. Marcus was beginning to understand why Elena had been so confident in her ability to help him. She wasn't just a trained professional. She was someone who had walked through the same darkness and found her way out. How long have you been doing this work? 3 years. I only take on clients who are dealing with sleep issues related to grief or trauma. Medical insomnia is different. That requires traditional treatment. But when someone's sleeplessness is rooted in emotional pain, conventional medicine often falls short. Marcus leaned forward. How did you know about my case? Elena smiled slightly. Dr. Harrison and I have a professional relationship. He refers patients to me when he suspects their insomnia has psychological roots. But he never tells them about me directly because the medical establishment doesn't recognize my methods. So you work in secret? In the margins. I charge high fees because I only take a few cases per year, and because my methods require complete discretion. People in your position can't afford to have unconventional therapies become public knowledge. This made sense to Marcus. His sleepless nights had been a closely guarded secret, known only to his personal physician and a few trusted staff members. The business world would have seen chronic insomnia as a weakness, especially in a CEO. But why did you choose to help me specifically? I'm sure Dr. Harrison has referred other patients. Elena looked down at her wine glass, and for the first time since Marcus had met her, she seemed uncertain. That's the part one wasn't sure I should tell you. What do you mean? I knew Sarah. Marcus felt the world shift around him. That's impossible. Sarah never mentioned anyone named Elena Martinez. Because she knew me as Elena Rodriguez. Martinez is my married name, was my married name. My husband left after Sophia died. He couldn't handle my breakdown. Elena reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, scrolling through photos before turning the screen toward Marcus. The image showed Elena with longer hair and a much younger appearance, standing next to Sarah in what looked like a coffee shop. Both women were laughing at something off camera. We worked together at Mercy General Hospital about 6 years ago. I was a pediatric nurse, and Sarah was consulting on their new patient management system. We became friends during the 3 months she was there. Marcus stared at the photo, trying to process this revelation. Sarah never mentioned you. Because we lost touch after her project ended. I moved to a different hospital, got married, had Sophia. We sent a few holiday cards. But you know how friendships can fade when life gets busy. Then, how did you know about me? Elena put her phone away and met his eyes directly. When Dr. Harrison described your case, a tech CEO named Marcus Chun who couldn't sleep after losing his fiancée Sarah in a car accident 3 years ago, I knew it had to be Sarah's Marcus. She talked about you all the time when we worked together. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What did she say? That you were brilliant and driven but had trouble turning off your work brain. That she loved you but worried you were going to burn yourself out if you didn't learn to relax. She was always trying to think of ways to help you find better work-life balance. Elena smiled at the memory. She showed me pictures of you two together. She was planning to marry you and spend her life teaching you how to be present and enjoy the good things. When Dr. Harrison described your symptoms, I knew that Sarah would have wanted someone to help you. Marcus felt overwhelmed by this connection to Sarah that he hadn't known existed. So you took my case because of her? I took your case because I recognized the symptoms of complicated grief, and I knew I could help. But, yes, knowing that you were Sarah's Marcus made it personal for me. She would have been heartbroken to know how much you were suffering. The waiter returned to check on them, and they ordered entrees, though Marcus barely noticed what he was asking for. His mind was reeling with the implications of Elena's revelation. There's something else, Elena said quietly. The reason Sarah was driving that night. She was coming to see me. Marcus looked up sharply. What? She had called me a few weeks before the accident. She said she was worried about you, that you were working too hard, and she didn't know how to help. I had been through my own struggles by then, and I told her about some relaxation techniques I had learned. She wanted to meet in person to talk about it more. Elena's voice became very soft. She was driving to my house when the accident happened. She was trying to find ways to help you sleep better, to be less stressed. That's why she was on the road that night. Marcus felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath him. For 3 years, he had carried guilt about their last argument, but he had never known that Sarah had died while trying to help him. I should have told her not to drive in the weather, Elena continued. I should have suggested we talk on the phone instead. When I heard about the accident, I felt responsible. If she hadn't been coming to see me, stop. Marcus reached across the table and took Elena's hand. You can't blame yourself for what happened any more than I can blame myself for arguing with her that night. Sarah made her own choices because she loved the people in her life. That's who she was. Elena looked surprised by his reaction, but also relieved. You're right. It took me a long time to accept that. Guilt was part of what made my own insomnia so severe. They sat in silence for a moment, both processing the complex web of connections that had brought them together. Finally, Marcus spoke. So when you helped me last night, you were fulfilling something Sarah had been trying to do when she died. In a way, yes. I've often wondered if this is what she would have wanted, for me to use what I learned from my own healing to help you find yours. Marcus felt a profound sense of completion, as if a circle that had been broken 3 years ago was finally being closed. Sarah's death had set in motion a chain of events that had ultimately led to his healing, through the very person she had been seeking help from. There's something beautiful about that, he said, and something that feels very much like Sarah's influence. She always believed that everything happened for a reason. Elena nodded. She talked about that when we worked together. She said that even difficult experiences could lead to growth and connection if we stayed open to the lessons. Their entrees arrived, and they began to eat, the conversation shifting to lighter topics. Elena told Marcus about her current work, how she had built her practice through word-of-mouth referrals and careful discretion. Marcus shared stories about his company, about the satisfaction of building something that helped other people, and about his plans to create a better work-life balance now that he could actually sleep. As the evening progressed, Marcus found himself increasingly drawn to Elena not just as the person who had healed him, but as a woman. She was intelligent, compassionate, and had a depth of character forged by real struggle and growth. More than that, she represented a connection to Sarah that felt like a blessing rather than a reminder of loss. Can I ask you something? Marcus said as they waited for dessert. Of course. Are you in a relationship? Elena smiled. No, I'm not. After my divorce, I focused entirely on my work and my healing. Romance felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. And now, Now I'm starting to think that maybe healing includes allowing yourself to be open to new connections. Elena met his eyes directly. Why do you ask? Marcus felt a flutter of nervousness that had nothing to do with business, and everything to do with the vulnerability of genuine attraction. Because I'd like to see you again. Not as a client, but as someone who's interested in getting to know you better. Elena considered this. That would be complicated, Marcus. I helped you through a very vulnerable time, and there are ethical considerations about relationships that develop from therapeutic interactions. I understand that. But what we shared wasn't really a traditional therapy relationship, was it? You said yourself that you invented your methods. And given our connection through Sarah, this feels like something she would have approved of. Elena laughed softly. You're right about that. Sarah always believed in following your heart, even when it meant taking risks. So what do you think? I think that life has brought us together in an unusual way, and it would be foolish to ignore that. But I also think we should take things slowly. You've just begun to heal from a significant loss, and I'm still learning how to open my heart again after everything I've been through. Marcus felt a warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with the wine. Slowly sounds perfect. I've spent 3 years rushing through life to avoid feeling anything. I'd like to learn how to savor good experiences. Elena reached across the table and touched his hand. I'd like that too. As they finished dinner and prepared to leave, Marcus realized that this was the first time in years that he was looking forward to tomorrow. Not because of a business meeting or a professional challenge, but because of the possibility of spending more time with someone who understood both his pain and his potential for healing. Elena had given him back his ability to sleep, but more than that, she had shown him how to trust in life again. And now, impossibly, she was offering him the chance to build something new from the foundation of everything they had both lost and learned. When they said goodbye outside the restaurant, Elena kissed his cheek gently. Sleep well tonight, Marcus. And call me tomorrow if you'd like to take a walk in the park. I think it's time we both started learning how to enjoy simple pleasures again. As Marcus watched Elena drive away, he felt a peace that was deeper than the physical relief of being able to sleep. For the first time since Sarah's death, he could envision a future that included happiness, love, and the kind of presence that Sarah had always been trying to teach him. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and decisions, but tonight, Marcus would sleep peacefully, surrounded by the love of someone he had lost and the promise of someone he was just beginning to know. As Marcus got ready for the day, he realized that his entire relationship with time had shifted. For 3 years, every moment had felt urgent and fraught, as if he were racing against some invisible deadline. Now, he moved with the calm deliberation of someone who had rediscovered the luxury of patience. He also noticed that his grief for Sarah felt different. The sharp, constant ache had softened into something that felt more like love than loss. Elena had helped him understand that carrying Sarah's memory didn't require carrying pain, and that healing didn't mean forgetting. But, as much as Marcus was grateful for Elena's help, he found himself equally intrigued by the woman herself. She had displayed an almost supernatural understanding of his psychological landscape, and her confidence in her methods suggested extensive experience with cases like his. Yet she had revealed nothing about her own background, her training, or what had led her to this unusual profession. Moreover, there had been something in the way she talked about sleep and vulnerability that suggested personal knowledge. Elena hadn't spoken like a detached professional. She had spoken like someone who understood his struggle from the inside. As Marcus prepared to leave for his first full day of work after a proper night's sleep, he found himself looking forward to the evening not just as an opportunity to express his gratitude, but as a chance to solve the mystery of Elena Martinez. Something told him that her story might be even more compelling than his own. What would she say to you right now? She would tell me to get some sleep. Marcus laughed through his tears. She always said that everything looks better after a good night's rest. Elena stood up and walked to the bed, pulling back the covers and fluffing the pillows. Then, let's honor her memory by finally taking her advice.